What's going on, folks? I'm your host, Manpreet, aka MMA Lock of the Night, and your boy on Twitter at MMALOTN. This week we're going over UFC Vegas 29, headlined by Korean Zombie and Jung Ige. A couple other interesting fights sprinkled out throughout the card. Not to mention the co-main event between Sergey Spivak and Alexei Oleinik. Not sure how that managed to make it to the co-main event slot, but here we are. We're in the COVID era. Alexei Oleinik has a little bit of a name behind him. He has headlined a couple of spots, so I kind of understand it a little bit. But, a couple other spots that I feel like should be more willing or deserving of the co-main event slot. Like Erosa versus Choi. I understand that's not a high value name, but in terms of entertainment value, I think they bring a lot to the table. Even Vera Jandiroba versus Kanako Murata, high level fight down there at 115 pounds, could definitely tell us, whether Murata is the real deal or not. And even Joaquim Silva versus Rick Glenn. That's a phenomenal fight that I can't wait to break down for you guys and obviously see play out once they actually step into the cage this Saturday night. Sorry, I'm just getting the graphics and such ready for you guys here so that we can get right into it. But yeah, if you guys, just a reminder, the card does start early, 4 p.m. Eastern prelim start time, 7 p.m. Eastern main card start time. And I believe we only have 12 fights this week. We did have Tim Means and Daniel Roberts. That one fell off. Tim Means is now fighting Nicholas Dalby next week. And then Tagiro Ulanbekov versus Tyson Nam. That was another one that was supposed to take place this weekend. That one gets postponed. I'm not 100% sure if they're actually going to be fighting each other in a couple weeks or not. But that was a spot that I was looking at to potentially parlay Tagiro Ulanbekov, as I do think that he would probably cruise against Tyson Nam here. But pretty difficult card to pick. Pretty difficult card to pick a lock of the night play here. I did ultimately settle on one last night, and I will be releasing that to the public tomorrow evening, probably just before the Ultimate Weigh-In show. But yeah, tough card to truly pick. There are some live dogs. You guys will see me pick several dogs on this card. Even the favorites, they might have a difficult time getting it done. But I think there are some decent over-unders that you could take advantage of this week as well, and not having to force yourself to pick an actual side in terms of who's actually going to go out there and win. So very much looking forward to this card. Again, fights are fights, but I just remembered now off the top of my head, I'm actually going to be going to a buddy's birthday party. So I won't be catching the card live this week. I'll probably catch it on the back end when I get back home. But yeah, going out for drinks, enjoy a little bit of time. Toronto's slowly starting to open back up, so might as well go enjoy it. And obviously, for one of my best friends' birthdays, I want to go there and support him. Right? I mean, we get fights every single weekend. We're bound to miss at least one or two. Obviously, I missed one the other week with me being on my wedding anniversary vacation, and now this week obviously with one of my best friend's birthdays. But it is what it is. You can't be a complete introvert. You can't be a complete couch potato just by sitting at home and watching the fights and doing research and all that shit. But it is what it is. All right, let's not waste too much more time. Let's see what the chat is saying first, and then we'll get going with the breakdown and stuff. My guy Danny Legs is in here nice and early. What's going on, my brother? Andy Price, another solid supporter of mine. I appreciate you stopping by. Sean Foster, what's going on, buddy? My guy AA, highly touted prospect, should be co-main event. Yeah, there are some solid spots, like you said. Vegeta in the chat, what's going on, buddy? Danny Legs is on Davy Grant. It won't be too long to hear what my thoughts are on that fight. Pepe Silva saying the UFC is obsessed with showcase low-level heavyweights. A few egregious co-main events this year. Yeah, you're right. There have been a couple of spots where you're just like, are you sure? If I'm not mistaken, Jorge De Castro and Carlos Felipe was a co-main event back in January. So that should just let you know. And more often than not, they usually have them as like the third last fight on pay-per-views as well. I don't understand it. I don't get it. I'm certain Maurice Green and Alexei Oleinik was the third last fight on a pay-per-view recently as well. Just saying. Greatest ever in the chat saying finally get to see this live. Yeah, this is a different time that I'm normally doing it. I'm doing my best to stay on schedule, but my main thing is making sure that I give you guys quality content when I'm actually dropping it. So I don't want to rush myself in terms of doing the tape and getting through all the work, but I will slowly but surely get you guys the information as much as I can and as soon as I can. So yeah, don't get used to this Thursday afternoon time slot. I'm aiming to make it go back to Tuesdays or Wednesdays, but no promises on this side. I don't want to continue to let you guys down. Greatest ever saying Semelsberger by decision. Again, we're going to be talking about that very shortly. CG Hustle is in the chat. What's going on, my brother? My guy Ben Peak as well, a fellow Patreon member. What's going on, my guy? Cam L in the chat. I believe he is a fellow Patreon member as well. Appreciate you stopping by. Derek Zed saying, I once missed a UFC for a wedding and I'd still regret it. Yeah, I remember somebody had a wedding on UFC 200 night. That was one of the worst weddings that I've been to just because that's all I could think about. Nicola would be JJ saying, I like Bruno Chaos Parlay, but I don't know much about that dude Silva is fighting. I will definitely fill you in as soon as I get around to that fight. And then lastly, my guy Derek C is saying, so glad Felipe Collier. I had money on Felipe. I was fighting during that first round. Who should Collier fight next? Give me Collier versus Parker Porter. That's the fight that I want to see. I don't think I'll be able to pick a side there. Maybe the over, but yeah, I had a little bit of money on Collier last night or last time around. He was my dog of the night play, which I might as well get into now. So let me just share my screen for you guys and we can get into this goddamn episode. There we go. All right. So as we always do, recapping the last event, win, lose, or draw. We don't hide from our L's out here. We don't boast too highly about our wins and then our winning streaks or anything like that. But we keep it consistent. This is a long-term game at the end of the day. This is a game that we play on a week-to-week basis. We can't be 100% all the time. So we went the complete opposite side, 100% the last time around, where we whiffed first and foremost on the dog night play, split decision loss. So I'm happy with the value that I got on Jake Collier at plus 175. But if I'm not cashing that ticket, I'm not happy at the end of the day. Very close fight against Carlos Felipe. I believe it came down to that third round, but that body language of Jake Collier did not help at all. Carlos Felipe was the one kind of pushing the pace there, staying in his face. I think the volume ended up going into Collier's favor in that third round, but Carlos Felipe was marching him down the entire time, and it's tough to sway the judges on volume alone, especially when you're looking at as gas as Collier did and Felipe moving forward the way that he was as well. So shout out to anybody that took Felipe there. I still think that Collier was aside in terms of the value that we're getting at plus 175, but that ticket crashes. And then lastly, the lock of the night play got a little bit too crazy here. I feel like in hindsight, obviously hindsight is 2020, but the under 2.5 in the Hill and Craig fight was probably the way to go there. I got greedy. I parlayed him with Edwards and ended up paying for it. 5U lock on the night play ends up shit in the bed. I really didn't think we'd see Hill play with Craig as much on the ground as he did. With that said, though, Craig has that weird arm lock that he's able to snatch up on a couple people, and Jamal Hill played for it. So shout out to Paul Craig, continuing to go out there and defy the odds, beating guys that he shouldn't be beating. But in this aspect, you can possibly put a little bit of credence into the fact that Jamal Hill is still kind of green, right? He's still going out there and beating some of these guys. The OSP win is great and all, but Paul Craig presents a completely different game here, and he was able to wrap up Jamal Hill quickly and get that tap. Edwards making it a little bit hairy at the end of that fight, but still goes out there and does what he was supposed to do, beat up Nate Diaz over 5 rounds. A lot of people were sold on the fact that Edwards is going to beat him inside the distance. I was not. Nate Diaz has only been finished 3 times inside of his career, one of them by a cut stoppage, one of them by a submission, I believe, way early in his career against a much highly experienced Hermes Franca back then. And then obviously the KO to Josh Thompson. But again, it's an anomaly to see Nate Diaz get finished. And a part of me was kicking myself for not just taking Edwards by decision, as I seemed pretty, or as I felt pretty sure about that outcome. And that probably could have been the lock of the night play. With that said, though, when you guys see my lock of the night plays or dog of the night plays, my official plays, I only make them money lines or totals or a parlay of both of them. I want lines that people that have massive access to. I want it to be widely available. I don't just want to be playing by decision props and making it my main play, and then some people can't tail it because their bookies don't offer it. Lock of the night is for the people. Let's just put it that way. So all in all, bad night. That snaps a 3-event winning streak. I believe that's 14 out of 17 winning events now straight, but is what it is. Yeah, I do want to say shout out to my guy DXJC that just brought it up. Yeah, we hit one of those over under parlays that I normally drop on my my fight day live chat. That's a staple of that stream. At the end of the stream, I normally give you guys an over under parlay, and it hit. It was the first time since February that it hit. But more often than not, we've been like 1 or 2 spots away from hitting those. Thankfully, last night, this past weekend, it actually ended up coming through. So it helped me in terms of recouping the losses on my official bets. But at the end of the day, it's my official bets that I want to tout the most. It's the official bets that I want to be proud of the most. And if they didn't come through, I don't want to boast myself too much. So at the end of the day, minus 6.5 units. Again, snaps that 3 event winning streak, and we're getting right back on the horse to see what's good. All right, let's see what the chat is saying, and then we'll move along. Reminding you guys, please do hit that like button. That's definitely the best way to help out. Daniel K saying, I missed a card recently, Hall Weidman for a wedding. God damn. Still hit his lock of the night. I believe that was Brendan Allen that night. Waleed Raid saying Bilal Muhammad was more safe than Jamal Hill. Slightly disagree pre-flop, right? Like I was saying it all week. I haven't picked MMALOTN to win, and I was happy to lose the bet lose that prediction the way that I did. But it at least answered some questions for us. Like we've never seen Bilal fight a fighter of that caliber or of that type of approach and that type of style, and he answered those questions. So good for Bilal. But I wasn't pre-fight. I wasn't as sold on him as I was with Hill. Rook Johnson dropping some gems for us, but I'm not even going to bother to entertain that. Derek C saying lock of the night this week is Diego Lima. Don't mind it. Cameron D said I picked Hill. I think we all underestimated Craig. I agree. CG Hustle Jamal Hill was giving out Roosevelt Roberts vibes at the weigh-ins. I knew we were in for trouble. That's a good little comparison there. Not a lot of people are actually making that comparison, but you're right. That was a good spot there. Ayub Ali saying, are you a tout? One of the best MMA content creators out here, hands down. I appreciate the love. Again, I don't classify myself as a tout. I'd say semi-tout, if anything, because I have a Patreon, obviously $5 a month. Link is in the description below, but it's more so to see if I can get support for the content that I put out more so than the picks that I put out, right? $5 a month. Like, what are you expecting to get in terms of the quality of picks, official picks, right? I know there's so many people that are way better than me in terms of picks, but I know my reads are solid more often than not. And that's where I try to sell the most is my content, my reads, my best bets and props article where I give you guys a brief breakdown on every single fight, give you guys the best bets and props from each single thing, each single fight, I should say. But yeah, I don't like calling myself a tout. I think in the very near future. So the only reason I call myself a semi-tout is I only put my bets on the Patreon after I have a 3-event winning streak or longer. And secondly, when I am putting out my picks for free, the Patreon members get it immediately. So as soon as I submit my bet and click bet on my bookies, I post on the Patreon. And then the public has to wait until Friday to actually see those. So there could be line movement. There could be all this crazy shit that's going on during that time since I placed the bet initially. But that's how I'm currently working right now. But I think I'm still mulling it over. But I think I'm going to go like full-time 3-event winning streak or not. I'll still give up my bets for free, but it's only going to be on the Friday or the day before the fights and still give the Patreon members the benefit of seeing those bets first. And then obviously trying to support me with the content and all that stuff that I'm putting out. So I appreciate all the love, through the Patreon. I believe we're up to about 425 members right now, which is absolutely insane. But I need to get the dubs, right? The dubs is eventually what brings the love. And I'm hoping to showcase that this weekend again. Matt McKay saying Chaos will not lose anymore. Pay heed to the guy. Chaos is different. DXJC saying the Lima brothers can't be trusted anymore. I could see Diego standing against the fence staring at Matt Brown for 3 rounds. John Hess saying keep crushing. I appreciate the love, brother. All right, let's not waste too much more time. So as you guys know, this is the live version of the MMA Lockcast. So I will be interacting with the chat, but I plead with you guys. If you want me to comment or recognize some of the comments that you guys are throwing out there, make it relevant to the matchup that I'm talking about. That's the only way that I'll bring it up. If you guys are talking about the main event, well, I'm talking about fucking Semelsberger versus Chaos, I'm not going to pay attention to any of your comments. I want to talk about the fight that I'm talking about. All right. So without further ado, let me just take a swig of water and we'll get into this damn thing. Oh, also, last thing I want to say, I will drop the pre-recorded version of the podcast by this evening. I'm hoping before I do the Propping You Up show at 8 p.m. And then obviously my best bets and props article is going to drop on the Patreon, as well as something new that I'm going to be doing is a full prize picks breakdown of the card. Very brief breakdowns of each one, but at least give you guys the best spots for every single spot, best spots prize picks wise for every single fight. I do obviously drop the top 3 picks that I have for prize picks on YouTube as a video, and that will come out tomorrow. But on the Patreon, something new I'm going to be adding is the full card prize picks breakdown. So that's something more for you guys to look forward to. If you guys are not familiar with prize picks, prizepicks.com/ promo code UFC 100, they'll match your initial deposit up to $100. It's pretty much just player props, right? You have they give you fantasy points or projected fantasy points, projected takedowns, significant strikes, minutes even, and then you pick 2 to 5 of them, put it together, and then they pay you out if they all end up hitting. So just another way for you guys to go out there and try to make some money off the UFC. All right, let's move the fuck along. First and foremost, we got Casey O'Neill going up against Lara Procopio. We got minus 150 on Procopio, plus 130 on Casey O'Neill. And I'm leaning... This is a tough one because I have a little bit of love for Procopio because she was able to go out there and cash as an underdog against Molly McCann last time, and I felt very convicted about that pick and happy that it came through. But in this fight with Casey O'Neill, man, I think that Casey O'Neill has a little bit of bite here as a dog. She has been training at Extreme Couture for several years now, rounding out her game over there, originally from Australia. I think she has Scottish roots. She was training at Tiger Muay Thai a bunch as well, but she's slowly starting to round out her game. She's still very early on in her career, though, right? She's only 23 years old. She's a purple belt in jiu-jitsu. Her striking seems to be coming along a little bit. She's very aggressive, and she's very... she's very aggressive and she likes to come forward. She doesn't have the greatest technique with her strikes, but I think the aggressiveness alone could give her some success in terms of implementing her will here against Procopio. I don't think Procopio has the greatest takedown game, but I do think that she'll have the better jiu-jitsu game. But I don't know if we'll see the true difference here between the purple belt in O'Neill and the black belt that Procopio has. I feel like Procopio is definitely more of a position over submission type of girl, so she'll try to establish her position before she starts going for anything that's going to look like a potential submission opportunity for her. But I think she's going to struggle here to get the bigger woman in Casey O'Neill down. And there are some deficiencies in Casey O'Neill's grappling. Obviously, there were instances where Shannon Dobson was able to, there was instances where O'Neill went for takedowns, and before O'Neill was able to settle on top, Shannon Dobson did a good job of continuing to scramble and roll out of things. But then eventually Casey O'Neill, especially in that second round, she was able to establish that top control, get that full mount, and then pound her out. Obviously, this is a much stiffer test than Procopio, who's a black belt in her own right. But I feel like both of these women are... There's question marks about both. Like I feel like Procopio, even in her loss to Carol Hossa, made a good account of herself. She got busted up, she got a volume there, but she just never let off the gas. She was still throwing combinations. She was still trying to stay in Carol Hossa's face. There were poor takedown attempts for her, but obviously I think that was more so out of desperation and just getting lit up by Carol Hossa the way that she was. And then we did see her complete a couple of takedowns against McCann, but a lot of those were like muscle. There wasn't really much technique. It seemed like she was just I don't want to call them desperation takedowns, but they were more so power takedowns than anything. Casey O'Neill, I feel like she's still improving on a fight-to-fight basis, right? Who knows what we're going to be seeing this time around compared to what we saw against Dobson last time. If you want to talk about striker versus striker, I think Procopio has her slightly beat. But again, like I said at the top of the breakdown, the aggression of O'Neill could potentially just nullify that technical edge that Lara Procopio probably has here. And then the strength. I think the strength is going to come into play here with Casey O'Neill probably if she's able to get that top position, I think that she can stay sound enough on top to really rough up Procopio from the top. I think she has devastating ground and pound. I think she's active enough in terms of keeping Procopio on the defensive rather than having Procopio actually throw submissions off of her back. I don't think that Procopio is as efficient off of her back as she is on top with her black belt. I lean O'Neal here. If this was a closer, like, man, if it was even odds, I'd be completely torn. But if you're giving me minus 150 and plus 130, I lean with the dog ever so slightly here with Casey O'Neal. I think she might just always end up getting the better positions, landing the better strikes, especially if it's on the feet. I think that strength is going to be tough for Procopio to overcome here. And again, if she can't complete takedowns, I think she's going to be screwed. Can she hit reversals from the bottom? Possibly. But I lean with O'Neal, who, I feel like she's coming from a better gym now. If I'm not mistaken, Procopio is out of actually, I could be wrong. I don't know why I thought she was out of Astra, where Tyler Santos and those girls are from. But I feel like O'Neal is going to be making improvements. And I'll take her to win this fight by decision, but not with a whole lot of conviction. There are a lot of guys out there that I do respect, that I know are on Procopio and are on Procopio pretty hard. So I could be off here, but I am ultimately going to be going with the O'Neal side. I do think we'll see a better version of herself, even though she's undefeated and she hasn't really fought the greatest level of competition on the regional scene. She's slowly got to pave her way and etch out her mark inside the UFC. And I think a solid win here over Procopio could help her, gain that experience and start taking on tougher opponents. But again, both girls very young in their MMA careers, 6 and 8 fights. Procopio a little bit more well-rounded out, I'd say. But I think that the strength and aggression of O'Neal will probably be the X factor, which should end up giving her the victory here by decision. Very, very close fight. Again, not mad at anybody taking Procopio either. All right, let's see what the chat is saying. My guy Danny Legs is on Procopio. Yeah, I believe those boys over at the club and sub are on Procopio here. Danny Legs, recency bias with Casey smoking the horrible grappler that is Shauna Dobson. I agree. There could be some recency bias in this spot, but I don't think Procopio is anything crazy. Like, she's a black belt, that you can't deny that. That's a fact. But I don't think that it's like a Mackenzie Dern level or a Verna Jandiroba level at this point in time. So I don't think she'll be as threatening with her jiu-jitsu, especially off of her back. Greg Love, Casey might grind her win with her aggressiveness. That's kind of where I'm going. Killer G taking a stab on O'Neal by decision at plus 295. I like that line. O'Neal sub odds. They are currently sitting at, I'd be surprised if O'Neal pulls off the submission here, though. Plus 800 for O'Neal by submission. I don't see much credence behind that, to be honest. Cameron D is saying I'm like 1 in 10 in women's MMA. Going to sit this one out. Ben Peake, you think O'Neal can win by submission from guard? I'd be surprised. Procopio does a decent job in terms of maintaining top positions. She stays pretty close to her opponents. She passes guard pretty well. I'd be surprised if O'Neal gets something off of her back. Jose Lopez, locked the night was Moreno after the weigh-in, figured it was shot, and it showed he was definitely flat in that first round. Danny Legs, Laura, the much better grappler, and fight much harder competition, looking good against them too. Yeah, I agree. I like to take the level of competition argument in moderation, though, right? Like, Casey O'Neal is at the mercy of the promotion she was fighting at and all those things, whereas Laura Procopio, even on the regional scene over there in Brazil, fighting girls like I believe Sydney Hocha, Mariana Moraes, like, those girls are obviously way further along than what Casey O'Neal was fighting on the Australian regional scene. So again, she was at the mercy of that. For these fighters that are just making it to the UFC, it's tough to put too much, at least in my opinion, it's tough to put too much credence into the level of competition argument. Now let's see them fight proper competition and see them pattern a little bit more. But unfortunately for us, we get them right now at 6-0 and 7-1. And luckily for Lara, she's had 2 fights in the UFC already against solid competition. And definitely better than what Shannon Dobson brings to the table. All right, let's move right along. We got Joaquim Silva versus Ricky Glenn. This is a fight that I'm very much excited for. Let There we go. Very, very fun fight. Both guys coming off of extreme layoffs here. I think Ricky Glenn is getting closer to that 3-year layoff, and Joaquim Silva is getting close to that 2-year layoff. But Ricky Glenn was supposed to fight Carlton Minus back in December. He catches COVID. His cornerman catches COVID. They ultimately have to pull out of the fight, and he has to wait 6 months more to end up getting in there and getting in some action. If I'm not mistaken, he just recently had a baby as well. I did see an interview that he did with James Lynch where he was talking about, trying to get a short notice fight, trying to get a quick short notice call right after his initial fight had gotten canceled. But then I believe that's when his baby came into play, and then he took some time off just to play father, and now he's back at it to go out there against Joaquim Silva. So this weekend, we're going to get the first glimpse of father Ricky Glenn, or Papa Ricky Glenn, and we'll see how much of an impact that actually has on him. Joaquim Silva on the other side, nagging injuries, I believe, just been out for a while, but it was obviously a good idea for him to stay out of competition, especially after that knockout loss to Nasrat Haqparast. Now, Ricky Glenn, this is a guy that I was familiar with even on the regional scene. He fought a couple of our Canadian guys. I believe he fought on the Score Fighting Series a couple of times. That's a good promotion that I used to help out with up here in Canada. And he seemed to be a solid veteran for the majority of his career. But coming over to the UFC, obviously his biggest win was pulling off that giant upset over Gavin Tucker. He was a plus 310 favorite. Gavin Tucker looked absolutely flat after that first round, and Ricky Glenn was able to take over. But I think that fight, over-exaggerated how good Ricky Glenn is to a lot of people, and the perception that we have of Ricky Glenn. And we definitely saw that in his next 3 fights. The Dennis Bermudez fight, close split decision win for him. The Philippe Nova fight, I believe that was a split decision win for him as well. And then there was another one, I believe, that he had a split decision win in. Actually, he had a loss to Evan Dunham before that. It's interesting because more often than not, he's the one pushing the pace. He's the one staying in his opponent's face and the one on his front foot. But guys like Kevin Aguilar, Miles Jury, and even Evan Dunham to a certain extent were teeing off on Ricky Glenn off their back foot. Ricky Glenn is a little bit too wild at times. He isn't the most clean, crisp, tight striker. He leaves openings for himself, especially when he's just throwing shots out there for the sake of throwing them out there. Kevin Aguilar really made him pay for those slots. Even when Ricky Glenn is not successful in his takedowns, big note here, Ricky Glenn is only 13% takedown accuracy inside the UFC. When he's not able to clinch fuck his opponents like he did against Philippe Nova and pushing these guys up against the cage and just imposing his will on them, it's kind of, I don't want to say easy to beat him, but it's the path to victory is there for you. Now, Joaquim Silva, heavy Muay Thai striker, has a lot of good things to like about him. Obviously, a BJJ black belt. We don't get to see much of that inside the cage from him, but he is a nasty striker. He may not be the technically better striker here, but he does have massive power that should affect Ricky Glenn's forward movement. Now, Ricky Glenn, that Kevin Aguilar fight just sticks out to me way too much. And I know that was close to 3 years ago, and I know that he missed weight in that fight, and I know that he's going up in weight here. But that style of just continuously moving forward and trying to break your opponent, but then being outstruck, especially by a heavy striker like Joaquim Silva, I think that Silva will have massive amounts of success here in terms of just putting it on Ricky Glenn. I think he's even allowed to get a finish here over Ricky Glenn, who has been quite durable throughout his UFC career. But there have been some very hairy spots where Ricky Glenn was caught on skates and he could potentially have been finished. But I feel like a guy that has the cerebral approach of Joaquim Silva could absolutely take advantage of that. Now, another false narrative that's out there about Joaquim Silva, I feel as though is his slowing down or his cardio issues in round 3. I think he's slowly starting to put that to bed, right? Like the Vince Pichel fight wins the 3rd round. The Jared Gordon fight finishes him in the 3rd round. Like he has the knack to go out there and still throw heavy punches and deal out or dish out some significant strikes against his opponent. And again, I think that Ricky Glenn being a little bit too wild at times with the strikes and leaving too many openings in the striking realm will just allow Joaquim Silva to let his hands go and let his strikes go. He's not just a headhunter, right? He digs to the body a lot, and that would definitely help him in terms of slowing down Ricky Glenn, who on paper might seem he has the slight cardio advantage, but I feel like, coming off a hip surgery and coming off a long ass layoff that he has, it's going to be hard for him to truly find his groove in a fight against a vicious striker like Joaquim Silva. Not to mention Ricky Glenn, if you guys remember, he used to be over there at Team Alpha Male. Now I think he just opened up a gym, or he joined up with somebody that just opened up a gym over there in Des Moines, Iowa. So he's over there training and getting in time with those guys. Joaquim Silva, on the other hand, I believe he's a value Sao Thai guy, so he has a ton of fighters that he can train with over there. Francisco Trinaldo being one of them. I believe Bruno Silva, who's actually fighting on this card later on in the evening, is another solid spot to go out there and train with too. But I like Silva here. I think he's going to land the more damaging blows. As long as Ricky Glenn is not successful in taking Silva down, as we've seen Silva at times a little bit too lackadaisical off of his back, a little bit too comfortable off of his back, and ultimately giving up minutes there. But if this fight stays in the striking realm, I think Silva absolutely tees off on him. And I saw my guy Z, right? Shout out to my guy Rockstar Z, who actually pinpointed the under in this fight, or the fight doesn't go to decision, which is currently at plus 160. But I'm expecting chaos in this fight. I'm expecting one guy to go out. And I think ultimately it's going to be Ricky Glenn, even though that Joaquim Silva was put out in his last fight. The reason I don't think that Ricky Glenn will finish Silva is Nasrat Haqparast hits way harder than what Ricky Glenn is going to be bringing to the table. And that was a beautiful combination and setup that Haqparast has in terms of the way that he's able to dispatch of Joaquim Silva. So ultimately, I'll go with Silva. I'll go with Silva to win by second round knockout, but this should be a fun fight. And Joaquim Silva was definitely one of the higher on my list of the guys that I felt most confident about on this card. And I think he'll be able to get it done here against Ricky Glenn. All right, let's see what the chat is saying here. Cameron D, fight to decision. If you are asking about the Procopio fight, I'd agree. In terms of this fight, I think we're going to get some. I think we're going to get some solid action here. This one, I think we see an under it. Levi Whiteboy is going with Ricky Glenn. AA saying, when did he make the name change from Rick to Ricky? He talked about on the James Lynch interview that he did recently. He goes, oh, I've always been named Ricky from like birth, but his father's girlfriend or something at the time was named Ricky as well, so he got rid of it. But now he's going back to Ricky, especially with him going back to his hometown now in Des Moines. BP saying, love Silva here, but Glenn could have leveled up. Glenn left Team Alpha Mare. Apparently, I went to go train at his local gym. Bad call, in my opinion. I agree. Alexei Shastian is saying this card is pure grease. I agree. AA is saying, pro tip, never trust a grown man that changed his name from Rick to Ricky at age 32. These cards are always easier than pay-per-views. This one's tough, man. I feel like this is the tougher card, to be honest. Bryce, I shut myself every pay-per-view card, but thrive on these lower-tier cards. Waleed Raidis saying Kevin Aguilar is a terrible loss to have. Yeah, that's kind of like I don't want to say a big part of me ultimately picking Joaquim Silva here, but like Ricky Glenn, one thing that he had going for him at 145 pounds was always being the bigger, lankier, rangier guy. But Kevin Aguilar is actually an inch shorter than Joaquim Silva, and he was having so much success in terms of landing off of his back foot time and time again against Ricky Glenn. So, yeah, I like Silva here. Bryce C, BP, considering how Team Alpha has been doing, maybe it was a good idea. Could be. Stefan Peck saying under 2.5 at plus 180 seems like a solid bet. I like that as well. Andy Price says he likes O'Neal. Pepe Silva, if you're not first, you're last. Ricky Bobby Glenn. Y'all kill me. Y'all kill me. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. We got Josh Parisian going up against Roque Martinez. Josh Parisian coming off a very underwhelming loss last time around against Parker Porter, where he just had a solid first round, but it seemed like he blew his wad, could not get it going after that, and Parker Porter was able to take advantage. It seemed like Parisian started to gas. It seemed like Parker was able to get the takedowns easier and easier, and was just able to put more of a pace on Parisian than Parisian was able to keep up with. I've never been sold on Parisian. I just didn't understand why people were so confident in him against Parker Porter. And I don't recall who I picked in that matchup, but I definitely told people to stay the fuck away from Parisian because I could absolutely blow up in your face. I feel he is one of those knockout or bust kind of guys. It seems like he does slow down later in his fights. Now he's going up here against Roque Martinez, who a lot of people don't think does even deserve to be in the UFC, and I'm one of those guys. But I'm actually going to be picking him to win here against Parisian, as I believe that Martinez is very durable. I'm not sure if Parisian has a submission game like Romanov to go out there and dominate him on the ground and try to look for a submission of any sort. And then I don't think that Parisian will be able to knock out Martinez, who's shown great durability. I think his only other finish loss came to Crocop due to a cut, which I really didn't think was that bad. Could have been some fishy stuff going on there, considering it was over in Risen and it's fucking Crocop. But Martinez has fought, some solid names on the regional scene. He has good durability. He has decent boxing. He has good pressure, good leg kicks as well. And I think his cardio is going to actually be the reason he ends up winning this fight. Now, this isn't Alexander Romanov where Roque Martinez is going to have to worry about getting grapple fucked for 15 minutes or however long it took Romanov. I think it was like 9 minutes it took Romanov to find that submission. Or I don't think that Josh Parisian is what Dontel Mays is, where Dontel Mays was sticking and moving a lot, staying on the outside, not letting Roque really get his game going. But Roque was having a lot of success late in that fight. The momentum was definitely turning. He was able to, stifle the movement of Dontel Mays, push him up against the cage. I believe he landed a takedown, if I'm not mistaken. But Josh Parisian here, if he's not able to get Martinez out of there early, I think he's going to struggle to keep up with the pressure that Martinez is going to be putting on him. I think Martinez will be kicking that lead leg over and over again, and then as long as he can, nullify the takedowns, I think Parisian will probably be successful with the first couple takedowns that he goes for in the first round. But after that, I think he's going to start to suck wind. I think it's going to get harder for him to get Martinez down, and then I think that's where Martinez starts to take over. So the spot that I'm actually going to be looking at is Martinez by decision, which I believe is in the plus 350-ish range, as I do think that he goes out there, puts it on Parisian. I think it looks similar to the Parker Porter fight, to be honest. The one spot that I actually do really like in this fight is the over 1.5. Like I said, Martinez, super durable. Parisian, durable in his own right. Like he ate some big shots from Parker Porter. I don't think that Martinez hits much harder than Porter. I see this fight going over 7.5 minutes, and then I think it turns into a total slop fest where we see Martinez go out there and just grind out Parisian up against the cage, land a couple of takedowns, and get his first one inside the UFC. So, yeah, do not bet Josh Parisian this weekend. I'm going Roque Martinez. With that said, though, I'm not going out there and putting my hard-earned money on Roque Martinez. But if you guys are forcing me to make a pick here, I think the underdog is worth it. I like Martinez. I'll actually be putting some money on Martinez by decision. I lied. I do think that he has a solid chance to pull this off by decision. Over 1.5 again, minus 185 is a little chalky, but I think the durability of both guys is going to come through, and we should see this fight at least hit that 7.5 minute mark. So once again, I like me some Roque Martinez, and I'm going to take him to win by decision. All right, let's see what the chat is saying. Stephen Peck is saying Parker Porter. Bryce D, is anyone betting Parisian straight up? You'd be surprised. You'd be fucking surprised. Bryce D, I think Roque can win this. I'm right there with you. Andrew Marchenko, my man, is hardworking instead of watching Euro Cup. I'll watch a show after the game. Just came here to say hi and show some love. I appreciate it, brother. I do have a bet on Belgium in play. I saw right before I went on that they conceded a goal within 3 minutes, and their live odds went up to plus 245. So I'll be keeping an eye on that score in the background. But I do have Belgium. I put like $450 on them at plus 245. So hopefully that comes to. Hopefully they can get that goal back and then go up one more. Are they actually? Real quick. It's still 1-0, so it might be off or not. BP saying I picked Porter. Yeah, I'm pretty certain I did. Is Belgium losing? Belgium is losing. They gave up a goal in the first couple minutes. Killer G, these big boys are going the distance. Roque is so tough, and he's got a pep in his stuff for such a big man. I agree. Gela Kia, right list who will win, bro. You'll have to wait to the end of the stream, my guy. Cameron D, go to the distance of my parlay, plus 128. I like that. Stephen Peck, over 1.5 is definitely a parlay piece. I agree. Waleed Raid saying over here at plus money is a steal. If you're getting this at the over at plus money, I'd be very surprised. Maybe the over 2.5. Over 2.5 is plus 100. Might as well just take the fight goes to decision at plus 130. Cameron D, haven't seen the overrunners on FanDuel in 2 weeks, or am I missing something? I don't have access to that, actually. Derek Z, the loser of this fight should fight Jake Collier. I like that as well. I don't mind that. Waleed Raid, Roque Martinez is the underdog here because of his physique. I agree. Ben is saying they just announced Oscar De La Hoya will be boxing Vitor Belfort on September 18th. What a shit show and a half. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. We got Chaos Williams going up against Matthew Semelsberger. Let me just wet my whistle real quick before we get going. All right, so Chaos Williams -150 coming in against Matthew Semelsberger at +130. Chaos Williams last time went out there and got outpointed by Michel Pereira in a very disciplined approach from Pereira, where he was able to stick on the outside, use his movement to the best of its ability, and then land a couple of takedowns later on in this fight to kind of just keep Chaos Williams guessing and just nullifying the big power that comes from Chaos. Before that, obviously, no Chaos Williams was able to knock out Abdul Razak Al Hassan and obviously Alex Morono in his UFC debut. And he seems like a decent prospect, right? He has a lot of big power in his hands, but I still feel like he's lacking in the technical aspect of his strikes. Now, he landed a very technical counter to Abdul Razak Al Hassan, which is why he was able to stiff him in that fight. But I think that the higher up he goes in competition, the harder it's going to be for him to end up getting W's, like we just saw in that fight against Michel Pereira. The question mark here is, where do we cap Semelsberger's potential at? Like, can he crack the top 15 one day? There are instances where I see in his fight that he shows top 15 potential, but it's all about, is he going to be able to stay away from the big shots of Chaos Williams? Now, he ate some big shots from Carlton Minus, or at least 8 shots from Carlton Minus, has eaten shots in his regional scenes fights as well. But I don't think he's fought anybody to the level of Chaos Williams in terms of the knockout power that's going to be coming back his way. So I'm interested to see the type of approach he's going to be taking here, because I'd be very surprised if he takes the same type of approach like he did in the Carlton fight, where he was getting touched up a little bit just so that he can implement his own style of, leg kicks, combinations, blitzing forward, landing some big shots, even to mix in a couple of takedowns against Carlton Minus. But I think he's going to have to mind his P's and Q's a lot here. This is one of those fights where it's like, you make one mistake, you're probably sleeping. But as an overall game, I like what Semelsberger brings to the table. Good combinations, good output, good leg kicks, ability to keep the fight at range if it needs to. He has a 1-inch height advantage, but he's going to be at a 2-inch reach disadvantage. But we know those kicks obviously allow the taller fighter to maintain their range a little bit better. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a kick-heavy approach here from Semelsberger to try to keep Chaos on the outside. And then whenever Chaos does eventually get frustrated and tries to throw his big shots, he's going to get countered probably by a double leg, or at least just movement from Semelsberger to get out of the way of the big shots. Now, the difference here between Carlton Minus and Chaos Williams, other than the power, obviously, and obviously the potential, I believe that Chaos Williams has much more potential than Carlton Minus. But Minus never really loaded up on his shots, right? Carlton was more of a volume striker. He doesn't load up. He just takes a shot from his chin and throws it right down the middle. Whereas Chaos Williams, outside of that Al Hassan knockout, more often than not, you see him loading up on his shots, and it's a little bit easy to telegraph and get out of the way. Semelsberger, I think we'll be able to see that. I think he'll be able to get out of the way of the big shots of Chaos. But again, it's so tough to go up against a guy that has, fight-ending power. Now, the question mark is, how sustainable is that knockout power for Chaos Williams, right? Is this something that he can carry on into the second and third rounds? Like, just looking back at his career, his second ever fight, he got a second round knockout against a guy that was 2-5. And all of his other finishes have come in the first round. There are guys that are able to, maintain that power for the majority of the fight. But with Matthew, I believe he'll come with a stick and move game plan, as well as mixing a couple takedowns when he can. How much is he going to be able to take the energy out of Chaos? And will that be enough to take the power away from what Chaos brings to the table in terms of his power? I think he can do it. So ultimately, I'm going to pick Semelsberger here. I think that he's able to stick and move, stay on the outside, change levels, keep Chaos Williams guessing. And I think that we see Semelsberger win this fight by decision. I'm not sold on Chaos. Like, he's going to go out there and starch fighters. Don't get me wrong. He might have some longevity in the UFC, because whenever he's on the ropes in terms of fighting a guy that, if he ends up losing the fight, it'll probably get him cut. I think he'll always be able to just stay in the UFC by just knocking out the guys that he should be able to knock out. And Semelsberger could be one of those guys. But I'm kind of impressed from what we've been seeing from Semelsberger. But this will be his first test in terms of seeing if his stick and move style will work against a guy like Chaos Williams, who probably has the most devastating knockout power that he's faced till this point. I will note, obviously, I'd be not doing my job if I didn't know that Matthew Semelsberger does have a KO loss on his record against Jerome Featherstorm. That seemed that was a round 3 finish against an 0-0 fighter who is now 2-1. And that one loss was to Robert Wadley. If you guys know Robert Wadley, very successful PFL fighter. And he did lose to William Knight by KO back in his amateur days about 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago at this point. So he has been finished in the past. Let's just see if he's been able to make the improvements to stay safe and stay away from the big power of Chaos Williams. I think he'll be able to, which is ultimately why I'm going to go with Semelsberger and Semelsberger by decision, which I think is currently sitting around plus 320. Yeah, plus 320 for Semelsberger by decision. All right, let's see what the chat be saying. PayPal, my money DFS, wet your whistle. You guys haven't heard that term before? Am I just too whitewashed over here? Greatest Star was saying Semelsberger has underrated technique. AA Carlton hit him 77 times, not going to work for him against Chaos. Cameron D going to go with Chaos, but not sold on him past round 1. Yep, that's another question mark, right? We don't know if he has the sustainability of his power. If he doesn't get that first round knockout, can he do it in round 2 and 3? My guy AA dropping that knowledge of saying that Chaos has gone to a decision 6 out of 6 times and won 4 out of 6 of them. Levi Whiteball, I'm not sold on Semelsberger, but I am on Chaos. James Vidala 18 saying I think Chaos chins him. Could absolutely happen. Tristan Sherhouse, Sublock, I'm working and listening to you this morning. Appreciate the love, my guy. What's Chaos by knockout? Chaos inside the distance plus 115. Chaos by knockout plus 125. Yeah. Again, I think it's Chaos knockout or Semelsberger decision. I don't think that Chaos will be able to keep up with the volume of Semelsberger. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. We got Vera Jandiroba going up against Kanako Murata, a fight that I'm very much looking forward to. Should be a grappler's delight, but whenever we say that, we normally get a striking battle. And I don't think that we'll get much of a striking battle in this fight. I do think that we'll see these girls tussle on the ground a little bit. We got the black belt from Vera Jandiroba in terms of jiu-jitsu, and then Kanako Murata, freestyle Olympic wrestler, has a ton of experience under her belt. Her only ever loss came to a rear naked choke loss to Rin Nakai, who, Rin Nakai was a minus 350 favorite fight going into that fight. Kanako Murata was only 5 fights deep into her MMA career, whereas Nakai had over 20 or 25 fights, I believe, at that time. So very unfortunate skill discrepancy or, experience discrepancy for Murata in that fight. But she's been able to put together, I think, 8 straight wins since that fight, 7 straight wins. And she is showing progress on a fight-to-fight basis here. Obviously, the best part of her game is her takedowns, but her striking game is definitely coming along. And at 27 years old, you got to believe that it's going to be making improvements fight-to-fight. I'm confused, though, in terms of how this fight is going to go in terms of, is Kanako going to use her wrestling defensively to keep this fight on the feet and try to just outstrike Verna? Or is she going to try to be the stronger grappler, get the takedowns, which I think she'll be able to if she wants to, and then just try to control this from the top position? But I think she's going to be playing with fire a little bit, as Verna is a solid jiu-jitsu player. I think Mackenzie even said it before she went into that fight with Jandiroba, that she believes that her and Jandiroba are the best jiu-jitsu women in the UFC. Obviously, we didn't get to see it play out too much in the grappling realm. We did see a lot of striking in that fight. But the spot that I like here the most is actually the over 2.5. It's only around that minus 200 range, and it's not often that you see that line for over 2.5 in women's MMA at minus 200. Even anything better than minus 300, to be honest. But when you look at their records, like you can even see in their last 5 for both of them, there are submission victories on a lot of their fights. But that's more often than not when there's a giant skill discrepancy between them and their opponents, right? Like minus 600 for Parisian and Murata. Of course, Murata is going to get the finish there. Emily Ducati, decent wrestler of her own, had some good submission opportunities of her own, getting Kanako into some very interesting positions. But Murata seemed calm, cool, and collected, and got herself out of those bad positions. And then the Randa Marcos fight, Murata did a good job in terms of nullifying the sporadic movements of Randa Marcos. And then the Vera Jandiroba side, minus 420 against Miranda, gets a sub. Plus 110 against Carla Esparza, gets nullified. Minus 255 against Mallory Martin, gets the sub. Minus 325 against Felice Herrig, gets the sub. Plus 140 against Mackenzie Dern, nullified and goes to a decision. So that's why I think that this fight ultimately will go to a decision. I think it will go over 2.5 rounds where we see both of these women's strength cancel each other out. There could be extended striking periods in this fight. There could be extended just grapple fucking moments from both sides. But I think that Murata is getting better in her grappling, especially with the defensive grappling in terms of being able to nullify what's going to be coming from the Jandiroba side. Now, this is a huge step up from Randa Marcos from Jandiroba, right? Obviously, that's a huge, huge step up. But I feel like we're going to be seeing the best version of Murata this weekend, which is ultimately why I'm going to take her to win this fight by decision. It's often you'll see the strong wrestler be able to dictate where the fight takes place, especially when they're going up against this high-level jiu-jitsu player. And I think that Murata, again, I think she's safest if this fight is on the feet, but I think neither woman has a significant advantage when it comes to the striking realm. So, yeah, I think both girls will be playing with fire if they just want to mainly strike in this fight. I think that the fighter that's able to implement their grappling, whether it's defensively or offensively, whoever's able to establish that more will have success in this fight. I think it's actually going to be Kanako Murata. So I'm leaning ever so slightly on the Murata side of things, but the spot that I like the most is them canceling each other out, and we see this fight go at least 12 and a half minutes. So I'm going to be going with Kanako Murata by decision, but I do like the over 2.5 most in this fight. Is saying Jandiroba has one eye on lock and the other on Murata. Don't kill me. Killer G saying Schneider are going to take this one. I'm assuming you meant Semelsberger, or am I missing an inside joke there? Urso Mwambeki is saying, notice that the UFC moved Brady versus Lee to prelims and changed Aldana versus Kunitskaya to main card. I don't get the logic here, to be honest. I think it's because it's a contender fight. It would have been great to have Brady and Lee on the main card, I agree. But I think that's more so because Aldana and Kunitskaya are more so closer to a potential title shot, especially considering the run that she's on. So in terms of significance, I think that Aldana Kunitskaya has more riding on it than Brady Lee. Killer G saying Jandiroba by decision at plus 245 isn't a bad line. I agree. One thing I will say, if you are looking to hit the over 2.5, I think the only way there's a finish in this fight is if it's Jandiroba by submission. So that's not too bad of an edge. I think it's around that plus 200, plus 250 mark as well for Jandiroba. Levi White Pussing gonna edge the female Rob Schneider. Okay, now I get it. Schneider gonna take this. I got it. She does kind of look like Rob Schneider. Derek Z saying minus 175 fight go to decision. Not a bad parlay piece. I agree. Bryce D usually don't care. They just put women on the prelims. Walid Raid, Verna can still submit her, in my opinion. Murata doesn't have Dern level jiu-jitsu. I agree, but I think that her wrestling is strong enough from on top. And even just strength-wise, I think that Murata is going to be the stronger fighter here. I think that should help her nullify the jiu-jitsu game of Verna. But again, I'm not saying like... again, it is tough because we have seen Murata in some very bad positions in terms of jiu-jitsu, and Verna is definitely the best jiu-jitsu player that she's faced up until this point. But I think that she'll do a good enough job in terms of staying out of trouble. Cameron D is saying, too scared of that sub. See Murata put herself in bad positions on the ground. Crash and burn. This Jandiroba Murata fight feels like a fade on DraftKings. I think so. Yeah, I think so. I think it truly comes down to how Murata wants to play this fight, right? Control time, takedowns, or just use it defensively and just try to strike. And then if it's a striking battle, then yeah, you definitely want to fade this one. AA dropping the knowledge, Murata's 73% takedown defense. But again, that's only off of one fight. That's only off of the Randa Marcos fight. So it's hard to truly put too much stock into that. Let me just hold something up. Yeah, it is only off of the off of that. Actually, hey, where are you getting that number from? Because even on UFC stats, it's at 0%. Because I don't think that we saw Randa Marcos actually even attempt a takedown in that fight. Yeah, she attempted no takedowns. All right, let's move on to the next fight. Ultimately, like I said, over 2.5 is a spot that I like in that fight, and I do like Murata to grind this fight out. All right, next up, we got Alexa Camur going up against Nikolai Negumereanu. Negumereanu, we haven't seen in the cage for a while now. The last time he fought was against Saparbek Safarov, who is also not in the UFC anymore. Negumereanu came into the UFC with a 9-0 record, and then he ended up losing that decision to Saparbek Safarov. I just quickly want to pull up when he did fight Safarov. That was March of 2019, so about 2.5-year layoff for Negumereanu. Mariano. Sorry, let's just go with Nick. Nick, very sketchy competition on the regional scene, right? He fought for RXF, which is that Romanian promotion, and he was getting a lot of favorable matchups in that fight. Just look at I'm just going to read off his opponent's records from his first fight to his most recent fight: 1-3, 0-0, 0-1, 2-1, 3-2. Here's the big one. 12-41, Yuri Gorbenko beat that guy because he quit on the stool after round 2. 7-5 after that, 2-15 after that, where he rear naked choked the guy in the 3rd round. And then Dan Konecki, who's 10-13, was a fight that he had before coming to the UFC. And then he runs into Safarov, where he just seemed like a bit of a fish off of the out of water off of his back, but he stays pretty defensively sound in terms of not giving up submissions or opportunities for opponents to take advantage of him there, which is ultimately why I think that Alexa Camur could pretty much win this fight wherever he wants. As long as he stays away from the big power of Nick, early in this fight, he should be able to land takedowns. He should be able to outpoint him. And a lot of people are going to start to detract from Alexa Camur because Camur lost to William Knight. And then obviously we saw what Da Un Young was able to do with William Knight a couple months ago. I still think that Camur has some solid upside. I think he has some solid potential. He's only 25 years old. He has a high ceiling in terms of what people are putting out there for him, coming from the same training camp as Stipe Miocic. People putting him up against Stipe in terms of saying that he deserves to be he has big potential just because of that. But I think we need to give this guy a little bit more time to flesh out. He had a solid debut against Justin Ledet, winning that fight pretty much everywhere. Obviously solid showing on the Contender Series, which eventually got him signed to the UFC. But that William Knight fight was left a lot to be desired. But that's just not the way that Nick fights. And I think that Nick is going to have a lot of issues in terms of getting his blitzing style going. He can just roll over guys that are 2-15 and stuff like that. But I think that Alexa Camur is going to make it much tougher for Nick. And I think that Nick will struggle again, layoff, and then dealing with the skill discrepancy. I think it's going to be too much for him. So I see Alexa just grounding this fight over and over again. I don't know if he'll get the finish. I think he'll try to play it safe as possible. So I think that we see Camur take this fight by decision just by grinding out Nick over 15 minutes. So Camur by decision is currently sitting at plus 135. That's the spot that I like in this. I was initially leaning for Camur as my lock of the night play, but I want to kind of trust higher level fighters. And I feel like I did that with what I did eventually put the trigger on for my fight, for my lock of the night play. All right, let's see what the chat is saying here. Cameron D, everyone is saying to fade Alexa, but Nikolai is trash. I think everybody's saying that just because of the William Knight fight. And we just get caught up in that way too much, man. Don't just look at their last fight. Look at their body of work and what they can bring to the table. And I'm not fading Nick just because of his loss to Safarov. He shows a lot of deficiencies. And I think that Alexa Camur is the much better fighter, the much more complete fighter, which is ultimately why I think he's going to win this fight by decision. James Vidala saying, do you think there will be a finish? If there is one, I think it'll come from the Negumereanu side, as I do think that's the only way that he wins this fight. Alexei Shestayan is saying Belgian game looks like a tough scene, down 1-0 and outshot 9-1. Yuck. And it's a halftime now. What's going on? AA just clearing things up. Sorry, Jandiroba has 73%. Murata loves to wrestle too, but she also has 0% finishes by TKO. Yeah. So she needs to get this to the ground, but most of her chokes are RNC, which won't be so easy when she's on her back with the wrestler versus... I disagree that just because she has 0 knockouts on her record, that she needs to get this fight to the ground. I think she's just serviceable enough in the striking realm that she should be able to have success there. Again, Jandiroba, not too far off in terms of the striking skills with Murata, but I just wouldn't go off of the fact that she has 0 finishes by KO, that she just needs to wrestle. Ursel is saying the UFC did Safarov no favors in terms of the Vieira fight. I really think that Safarov could do some work in the middleweight division, but the UFC wasn't about it. Strong sambo background. That guy just, I don't know. I was never really big on him. AA Kimura's biggest favorite on the entire card, according to the odds. I agree. Camur D is saying Alexa is a great parlay piece. Again, I want somebody a little bit more proven, especially if I want to make them my lock than I play. And initially when I was looking at it, it was more so of a fade on Nikolai, and then I just wasn't ultimately impressed with Alexa in terms of paying the juice on him there. And I don't simply just want to make a lock than I play fading one side. So I do like Alexa Camur to win this fight by decision, though. All right, next up, we got Diego Lima going up against Matt Brown. We got plus 150 on the Mortal and minus 170 on Diego Lima. Let's start off on Lima, who came back from a pretty significant layoff, ended up beating or losing to Bilal Muhammad last time around. That was a fight I believe I took Diego Lima to win by decision at like some crazy number, plus 800 or something like that. Had some success with his leg kicks, but it seems like his cardio was really jumping on it or dumping on him. Whether that was the layoff or just the pressure that Bilal was putting on him, Diego Lima definitely seemed to fade as the fight was starting to go longer and longer. But that calf kick, he brought it back. That was something that he was successful with during his 3-fight winning streak. And I think that's something that he'd be successful with here against Matt Brown. If you guys remember Matt Brown's fight against Miguel Baeza, he did have some early success in there in terms of hurting Baeza, but he was ultimately starting to get debilitated by the calf kicks that Baeza was throwing on him at time and time again. And I think that will see Diego Lima take a little bit of that page from that book and try to implement it here by staying relentless on the front foot of Matt Brown. Diego Lima, untrustworthy at this point, right? We need to see him go out there and showcase 50 minutes of solid cardio once again, like he did in his fight against Court McGee, like he did again in his fight against Luke Jamau. And now he's going to be dealing with the pressure fighter in terms of Matt Brown. And if he can nullify that with his calf kicks, with his striking advantage, and maybe even try to get in a couple takedowns there, he should be able to cruise in this fight. I am more so on the Diego Lima by decision side here. I think that he'll land the better strikes. I think he'll be able to get in and out of the big strikes of or the big exchanges that Matt Brown is going to be trying to engage in. And again, ultimately, I think it's going to come down to the calf kicks of Diego Lima. That's going to slow down Matt Brown and then open up the punching opportunities for Diego Lima. Could be the potential of a knockout too on the Diego Lima side. But ultimately, I'll go with Diego Lima to win this fight via decision. Not the biggest conviction. I'm not going lock the night deep on Diego Lima here, but he should be able to beat the 40-year-old Matt Brown, who's ultimately going to be on a 3-fight skid after this and probably will end up hanging it up after this too. So I'm going Diego Lima by decision, not ruling out a KO prop. All right. Let's see. Anthony C. Oh, shit. We live. What's going on, my brother? All right. Doesn't seem like we have much love for this fight in the comment section. My guy AA saying over safest on the Brown Lima. I wouldn't say safest, but I do think it is the livest. I do think that we see this fight go 15 minutes. What is the over there? Over 2.5 at minus 130. Not bad. Diego Lima by decision is plus 150. Not too shabby there. Lima by KO is plus 400. Interesting. But yeah, hopefully we see a better version of Lima this time around than what we saw last time around. Derek Z saying, I love Matt Brown, but he looks finished and there are no happy endings in MMA except combat porn. Ursel, you think it's too late for Douglas Lima to make his UFC debut? I do not, but I don't think he's going to be coming to the UFC anytime soon, especially after losing the way that he did against Almasov last time around. A+ is on Brown. I'll never fault anybody for taking a shot at the underdog. All right, let's move on. Next up, we got Wellington Turman against Bruno Silva. I don't even know if this is the main card yet. Let me just see if I can pull up that information. Yeah, it looks like Negumereanu and Camur is the prelim headliner. And we got a 6-fight main card with Wellington Turman and Bruno Silva being the second. So minus 145 on Bruno Silva, plus 125 on Wellington Turman. The line is actually starting to close a little bit. I should have to update that screen for you guys. But minus 135 right now for Silva, plus 115 for Turman. So I find it very difficult to go out there and back a guy in Bruno Silva who is coming off an extended layoff, and not just an extended layoff, but extended layoff due to USADA violations. I don't know how you can be confident in that. Apologies. Let me get some water. So we got classic grappler versus striker matchup here. Bruno Silva, a very devastating knockout puncher. Just as we saw in his last two fights, where he came in as a plus 490 and a plus 450 underdog, respectively, and was able to dispatch of Alexander Shlemenko and Artem Frolov. So good wins for Silva there, and ultimately notching his spot in the UFC. He was also on one of the Ultimate Fighter Brazil seasons. He ended up losing to Vitor Miranda, and then went onto the regional scene and started to build up his wins over there before making his UFC debut this weekend. Takedown defense, very sketchy. And I think that Wellington Turman will be very successful in terms of getting this fight to the ground and nullifying the power and the striking advantage that Bruno Silva will have. Last time we saw Turman, he got knocked out by Andrew Sanchez, who, Andrew Sanchez is not much of a knockout puncher, but he does seem to have found his love with striking. And he seems like a guy that could generate a solid power if he's able to really get a solid striking game going. And that's exactly what Wellington Turman, unfortunately, had to find out that night. Turman, still 24 years old, still has the ability to go out there and make some improvements, but I do think that his ability to ground this fight as easily as it will be able to should give him the advantage here and should make him the favorite. Again, a lot of people overlooking the USADA violation from Bruno Silva and how much of a deterrent that could have in his future performances, and that probably is a good reason as to why he was able to generate as much power as he did to knock out guys like Shlemenko and Frolov. But again, we just don't know until he is completely off the sauce like he should be this weekend and how he fares against a guy like Wellington Turman. But I do think that Turman, obviously better, actually, I'm not going to say better level of competition. Silva's been around for a while, and like I said, was on the Ultimate Fighter Brazil, has fought some decent competition, but I think that Turman's ability to get the fight to the ground will be the dictator in terms of how this fight ends up playing out. So I do like Turman. I do think he wins by decision, but I do think a submission is live here, as Bruno Silva has been tapped a couple times. I believe his last loss came to a Camur, to Moise Rambon, who's 22-11-3. And then he has been submitted earlier on in his MMA career. He was 5-5 at one point, and since then has only conceded 2 losses, one of them being an exhibition one, so not actually on his pro record. So he's actually on a crazy run right now. So he's 4, 8, 12, 13-1 since starting his career 5-5 back in 2012. So ultimately, though, I do like Turman. As long as his chin is decent, he's going to have to strike a little bit to kind of lull Bruno into that thinking first. And then I think that Turman will be successful in takedowns the later that this fight goes. And ultimately, I think he's going to be able to grind out 2 rounds here at least to get a decision victory. So I'm going Wellington Turman. I think he's a solid dog in the spot, and I think he wins this fight by decision. All right. Hayden Schinderman is saying under 2.5 and Turman Silva. You think Turman can get the sub or just lay and pray? I think he's going to look to lay and pray, to be honest, to try to keep Bruno Silva down. I think he's going to look to be more position over submission, because as long as this fight is in the striking realm, it's very live that Bruno Silva could get his get a finish here by knockout. The line is currently, for the over-under, we got over 2.5 plus 105, under 2.5 minus 125. But ultimately, I'm going to take Turman by decision. It is saying if USADA isn't testing anymore, Silva by KO all the way. USADA is definitely testing from what I know. My guy BP is on Turman. I like it. BP saying thanks Bookie for the free money. Fools break Silva because of the TKOs Silva got by beating a 39-year-old. Derek Z saying this fight has red flags all over it. I agree. Kelly G saying Turman going to go Khabib on this guy as long as Turman doesn't get KO. Turman by sub plus 420. Yeah, I think if there is sub prop actually plus 420 is not too shabby. I don't know why I thought it'd be a little bit closer than that. I might have to take a little bit of a sprinkle on that. Turman by sub plus 425, plus 500 a couple spots. Not too bad. Mixed partial farts in the chat. What's going on, my guy? Ursel is saying Silva went to Russia and took out their top dogs as a heavy underdog in both fights. Yep. They are older guys. Hey, wait, Bruno Silva got Popeye started before he ever got into the UFC. Exactly. Austin Johnson played both on DraftKings and Fade betting the fight. Not a bad approach. Yeah, both guys are very live for a finish. If Bruno Silva wins, probably knocks him out. If Wellington Turman wins, it's either by submission or takedowns and control time, which will definitely score very highly on DraftKings. AA looking at his record, most of Silva's wins are versus strikers. Anytime he faces a decent grappler, he gets subbed. Yep. Also saying, I think Silva has learned not to engage in the ground and ultimately keep this fight on the feet. It's not that easy though, especially if guys are shooting takedowns on you. If Turman didn't get KTO forward last time around, he would be an easy pick here. I think, yeah, I agree. He would probably even be the favorite here. Liam Willow is saying Belgium equalized. Awesome. I love it. I just need them to score one more. Let me cash that ticket. Levi Whitebull saying not the good Bruno. I agree. Silva could pull a Daniel Pineda against Cub. Yeah, true. Turman 69% finish rate. BP, the line flipped on this bout. No. I wouldn't be surprised if it does flip by fight time. But Turman, the best or the worst I see him at right now is around plus 100 on DraftKings. So it hasn't flipped as of yet. Killer G, at first I thought little Bruno Silva was fighting Turman. I was like, what the fuck is going on? Yeah, it's definitely throwing people for a loop. Could you imagine me trying to put the tape in next together as well for Bruno Silva? That was a bitch and a half. Is what it is. All right, let's move on to the next fight. My stomach is starting to grumble, so I got to get some food in my belly before. I actually have a podcast appearance I'm going to be doing at 2:00 on my guy Prodigy MMA. I think his name is D Prodigy. So look out for me on his channel. I'll be sure to tweet that out for you guys as well. Danny Leg saying line did flip. Had Turman as a huge favorite. Interesting. I must have missed that. Sorry, who had them as a big favorite? Bet online. Well, yeah, wow, minus 170. Shit. I missed the opener. But yeah, I think all the money came in on the wrong side, to be honest. Thanks for clearing that, Denny Legs. All right, let's move right along. We got Seungwoo Choi going up against Julian Erosa, minus 150 on Choi, plus 130 on Erosa. And man, like this card, very tightly contested throughout the card. It's a 12-fight card, and we have 1, 2, 3 fighters that are minus 200 or more. So 9 fights that have fights that are under minus 200. Very closely contested fights throughout the card. Now, this one with Seungwoo Choi and Julian Erosa, I do like Choi here. And now we're seeing the better version of him as fights start to progress, right? He did make a good account of himself in the Movsar Evloev fight and Gavin Tucker fights. Even though he lost those fights, he showed that his takedown defense was starting to improve, especially against guys like that. You know, that's kind of been his kryptonite, but when you're not able to get him down, his Muay Thai style is very difficult to deal with. I won't be surprised to see Julian Erosa try to go out there and try to, engage in strike or grappling situations, try to get his darts going or some of his submission game going. Otherwise, I think he's going to be in for a long night against Seungwoo Choi. Julian Erosa throws wild winging shots. It's almost like he whips his shots from his waistline, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I think that's going to cause him a lot of trouble here against Seungwoo Choi, who's much more of a tight and crisper striker, and he'll be able to land the straight shots down the middle much quicker than what Julian Erosa is going to be bringing to the table with his wide winging hooks. I think the pressure and pace of Erosa will make it difficult for Choi to find his spots at the beginning of this fight. But as the fight starts to settle in and start to wear on more and more, I think we'll see Choi get more and more comfortable with his Muay Thai. He'll probably have to stuff a couple takedowns, which I do think that Erosa will look to do early in this fight. But I do think that ultimately Choi is going to be able to keep it on the feet and then start to pick apart Julian Erosa. I do think that Choi wins this fight by decision. I could see it being a war. Erosa does like pulling his fighters into wars at times, but I think that the more superior striker in Choi and the more technical striker in Choi is going to come out on top. Does he get the finish? I'm not 100% sure. I think he's going to win by decision, but Erosa can be wild and be a little bit loopy at times, which could result in him getting knocked the fuck out in this spot too. I think Choi is getting better on a fight-to-fight basis, like I said. Shout out to everybody that hit him as a plus 200 dog against Yusuf Zalal last time around, but they all saw it. Zalal's wrestling game leaves a lot to be desired. He wasn't able to get Choi to the ground, and then if this is mainly a striking fight, Zalal was going to get teed up, exactly what Choi did in that fight, so he definitely lived up to his hype in that fight. But here, I think that Choi lands the better strikes on the feet. I think that he deals with the brawling mentality of Julian Erosa. I think he makes him pay with a lot of counter shots, especially those ones that, like I said, coming right down the middle. And then I think if Erosa tries to wrestle, I don't think it's good enough to. I don't think it's better than Evloev's wrestling. I don't think it's better than Gavin Tucker's wrestling. So I think that we'll see Choi have a lot of success in terms of keeping this fight vertical, and then he'll be able to get his Muay Thai going and outstrike Erosa over 15 minutes. So I'm going to take Choi to win this fight by decision, and that line is currently sitting at Choi by decision is plus 190. Don't mind that spot. All right, let's see what the chat be saying. Alexei Shestenian is saying Erosa KO proper plus 660. I wonder why that's, yeah. Danny Legs has the under 2.5 for plus 135. Not bad. I don't mind that. Choi could knock him out. Again, Erosa's a little too wild at times. AA says Choi decision looks good to me. I agree. Nevero, who has Turman sub in the UFC, arguably is Silva UFC ready. Hope it isn't, but I do see decision outcome most likely. Tristan Sherhouse, I'm waiting for the proper new up show, possible under 2.5 for Choi and Erosa. I can see it, but I think ultimately it's going to be Choi by decision. Austin Johnson, yeah, I think it looks dirty early on, and Choi slows the pace, eventually finds the KO. Southpaw versus Ortho, right? And Choi is pretty accurate. I do agree with those statements. BP Choi has gone blonde. Just to let you guys know, Carlos Felipe, Charles Oliveira, blonde fires be doing very good. I got to see that. I don't think I've seen that yet. Ben Peak is Wu Choi good on the money line parlay. Yeah, I think he still holds some solid value. Minus 140, minus 150. I think he's the better striker here. It's just how he deals with a wily veteran and Julian Erosa and how he is able to make fights, a dog fight. But I think that we'll see Choi wade through that fire and really put it on Erosa. The one thing that I would say, again, MMA math never really works out, but the fact that Choi wasn't able to put away Suman Mokhtarian leads me to believe that he probably won't be able to put away Julian Erosa. Could be wrong, though. He fights very technical, very smart, doesn't overextend. That's something that Erosa does a lot. So maybe that's something or somewhere Choi can take advantage and possibly knock him out. But I think that we'll see a conservative approach here from Choi. Erosa is going to fight smart and not engage. He's finally got a winning strike in the UFC. He doesn't want to lose it. Streak, I'm assuming that's what you mean. Kung Dao Chicken, this will be a dog fight. Sprinkle fight doesn't go to decision. Could happen. Very fun and close fight. All right, let's move on to the next fight. We got Marlon Vera going up against Davy Grant. Plus 170 on Davy Grant, minus 200 on Marlon Vera. And if I'm not mistaken, this fight originally, the first fight took place about 5 years ago when Davy Grant was able to pull off a win via decision in a fight where he was able to implement his grappling, the strong top pressure, very much nullified the approach from Marlon Vera, and Davy Grant was able to get his hand raised that night. Since then, Davy Grant's only had 5 or 6 fights, and Marlon Vera has had about 12 or 13 fights. So obviously Vera is staying very active, getting the much higher steps up in competition, fighting the better fighters. And I truly believe that's why he's a minus 200 favorite here. Whereas Davy Grant, not staying as busy, is on a 3-fight winning streak over decent competition, Gregory Popov, Martin Day, and then Jonathan Martinez, but definitely doesn't compare in terms of what Marlon Vera has been going up against in a fight against Yadong Song, where he probably could have got the decision, beat Sean O'Malley the way that he did, and then obviously Jose Aldo. I believe that fight was 1-1 going into the last round, and then we saw Jose Aldo go out there and just backpack Marlon Vera. When's the last time you saw Jose Aldo dominate somebody? Not dominate, but at least control somebody for the majority of a round with jiu-jitsu? You don't see that. But Marlon Vera still shows those deficiencies in his game. And I think that's something that Davy Grant can take advantage of here. First and foremost, shout out to everybody that got Davy Grant above plus 200. But even at this spot, I still think he has massive value, as he does still showcase the solid technique that he needs to go out there and beat a guy like Marlon Vera. He has a decent striking game, obviously a ton of power in his hands. He has a good long side kick that he's able to keep his fighters at range. And then when he needs to, he's able to mix in those takedowns because he's a very strong and imposing fighter. And I still think that Marlon Vera has those grappling deficiencies. He is decent off of his back. He has 3 submission victories to his name since his fight with Davy Grant. And since then, Davy Grant has lost via submission 3 times. So there is a potential for Vera to pull off a submission in this fight. But I do think that the top pressure of Davy Grant is going to make it too hard for Marlon Vera to get the space that he requires to pull off a submission off of his back. Vera by submission is sitting at plus 275, so not too bad of a hedge if you are looking to back here Grant at plus money. But I really like Grant here. I think he'll be able to secure the takedowns. I still do think that Vera has issues off of his back. I think he's going to struggle in terms of throwing up submissions or even getting his volume game going on the feet. On the feet, I give the advantage slightly to Davy Grant, as I do think that he lands the better strikes and more impactful strikes, whereas Marlon Vera is a little bit more of a volume striker, has some decent power in his hands, but nothing like one-punch knockout power-esque. He's more of an accumulative finisher than a one-punch knockout kind of guy, whereas Davy Grant, we've seen of one-punch KO his last 2 opponents. Marlon Vera, very durable. I will say that. So I'm ultimately going to be taking Davy Grant to win by decision. And again, I think he's a very good spot here. Like as an underdog, this should be much closer to pick him, I think. But I think that with Marlon Vera getting as much exposure as he has since the last time he fought, it's almost blinding people into thinking that Vera's gotten this much better. Now, Davy Grant obviously pushing 35, 36 this year. Vera at 28. So Vera definitely could have been making progress and improvements in that amount of time. Not to mention Marlon Vera was only 23 years old the last time that they fought. So yeah, this is probably a better version of Vera that we're getting, but I still don't see those inefficiencies with his ability to deal with guys that are going to attack him from a grapple-heavy approach, and I do believe that Davy Grant will look to do that in this fight. So I've been one of those guys that have just been continuously counting out Davy Grant over his last several fights, but this is a spot that I feel like we've seen him already go out there and implement the game plan. It might be slightly tougher because Vera is definitely getting better, but I still do think that it's going to be a very effective approach from Davy Grant here. Strike with him for a little bit, mix in a couple takedowns, be the stronger guy, which I think he truly is here, and then just impose as well. So I'm going to go Davy Grant, and I'm going to go Davy Grant by decision. Look at that. My guy, Danny Legs in the chat, wore Davy Grant right off the bat. James is saying Davy by KO. That wouldn't be bad, but I do think that Vera is quite Marlon Vera is quite durable. Never luck of the night. Is this your new Showtime Thursday? Am I late? But I thought you was a Monday, Tuesday guy. Yeah. I'm still aiming to do Monday and Tuesdays, but I'm not trying to force myself into doing it if I'm not truly ready. And I didn't believe I was truly ready Monday or Tuesday to give you guys the breakdowns. I am now. Like I've gone through all the fights with a fine-tooth comb, and now I'm ready to do it. I will always aim for Tuesday, latest Wednesday, but no promises. Danny Legs plus 220 money line and plus 380 decision. Davey to the moon. I like that decision prop. I definitely like that decision prop. Over 2.5 in this fight, I think is very live, and it is sitting at minus 120. I think that's a good spot. I see decision for this fight. I agree. Austin Johnson saying Grant dog of the week. Don't blame you. Killer G saying I'm on Grant, but Vera. Sorry, I'm on Vera, but Grant by decision at plus 465 is absolutely nuts. I'm definitely taking a shot on that. Vera has good durability. I agree. James is saying Davey is so dangerous. Yep. Let's go. Dog of the night, Daniel K. Cheeto's the most overrated fighter in the UFC. People like him because he beat Sean. He's lost to every other top level of competition he's gone up against. I kind of agree with this narrative. Hungarian Hammer saying, what's the parlay? There is no parlay. Time is not a line. I took a shot on Davey Boy at plus 195. Amazing line. I figured that line was just too good. The guy just keeps delivering as an underdog. I agree. BP saying the train ends here for Davey, and I'm British myself. Tape doesn't tell me to back Davey here. Interesting. Alexei Sestien, Davey Grant plus 475 on decision. I like it. And Derek C. Smaller cage should help Davey Grant. Don't mind that. AA, what's Vera's path to victory? I think it's volume and possible submission. Alexei giving us the good news. Belgium a 2-1. Is it 2-1? My score thing here. Oh, there it is. There it is. Hopefully they can hold on to that lead and cash that plus two. Was it 245 or 275 that I got in game? Let me just look it up real quick and then I'll get to the breakdowns for you guys. It's funny because somebody in my Discord is like, I'm on Belgium. There's no way they'd lose against Denmark. And then within 3 minutes, Denmark scores that first goal. And then I'm like, you know what? There's still enough time for Belgium to pull off the comeback. And I definitely want to take advantage of them. Intertops did limit me in terms of putting as much. I wanted to put $500 flat on the live line for Belgium at plus 245, but they only allowed me to get 423 down. So I got $423 to win about 1,010 on Belgium plus 245. So hopefully they hold on to that lead. Please hold on to that lead because that'll be a nice cash to start off the day. I did actually cash on the over 2.5 in the first game of the night or of the morning. North Macedonia against Ukraine, I think it was. That was a nice little cash. Shout out to my guy Grounding Eddie for that tip. Things have been going good over here. I'll touch more upon that later on in this as well. Yeah, I know nothing about soccer, so I won't be talking too much about it. I'm just tailing guys that like soccer. I know Belgium's a good team. I know they should beat a team like Denmark, which is why I ultimately made that live in-bet play, especially at the odds that they were at. I had to do it. All right. Like I said, David Grant by decision. That's my play for this card. All right, next up, we got a co-main event. Alexei Oleinik going up against Sergey Spivak, and I do not trust Spivak at minus 225, but he should win this fight. Both guys, they are most successful, obviously, when they get their grappling going. But I'd be very surprised if we see Sergey look to grapple for the majority of this fight. I think he has a slight striking advantage, but not by a whole lot. Alexei Oleinik can make fights very, very dirty and very tough for his opponents, especially if they do get wrapped up in that grappling realm. But, this isn't Chris Daukaus. This isn't Derek Lewis. This is Sergey, who likes to go out there and grapple fuck his opponents, clinch them up against the cage. But I just don't know how much he truly wants to do of that against a guy like Oleinik, who can find submissions from pretty much anywhere, right? Can Spivak get wrapped up in an Ezekiel choke? Probably. Can he submit Oleinik? Probably not. Can he ground and pound Oleinik? Probably. But I think that the longer that this fight goes, the better chance that Spivak has to win of it. I think he can go out there and grind out Oleinik, whether it's cage clinching, outstriking him on the feet, and then later on in the fight, looking to get it to the ground and starting to pound or ground and pound Alexei Oleinik. I ultimately will be going with Spivak, and I'll go with him to win this fight by decision. But I'm not paying minus 230 on a guy that could potentially get caught in something crazy here. Over 1.5 at plus 135 is very intriguing to me, as I do think that this will be a slow-paced fight where we see neither guy go for a finish or try to overextend other than Oleinik. But Oleinik is quite durable. I don't think that Spivak has crazy knockout power, and I don't think that we'll see him get the ground and pound finish like he did against Jared Vandera. At least I don't think it will be early. If that happens, it'll probably be later on in the fight where Oleinik's not really going to be able to muster up the energy to pull off anything off of his back. So I'm going to go Spivak. I'm going to go with, I think Spivak round 3 could be live here, plus 850. I wish it was at least in 4 digits. But even Spivak by decision, sitting at plus 677. That is an outrageous line. I'm going to have to take a little bit of a stab on there. But I do think that Spivak wins this fight, and I'll take him to win this fight by decision. Kung Dao Chicken saying live bet Spivak after round 1. Yep, he could absolutely... he could absolutely he could absolutely win the first round here, and you probably get a much worse line after round 1. Mr. Savage, level 9,000. Martinez is 5'9". He ain't pushing anybody. Oh, I think you're early on in this fight or in this podcast. Danny Legs, he's on the under 1.5 at minus 145. Interesting. Spivak by decision plus 700. I like that. Danny Legs once again. Alexei, 10-4 to the under 1.5 in the UFC, 59-75 in his career. Yeah, I think this is one of those spots where like the statistics all point to the under, just like fucking Antigulov and Christian a couple months ago. That one ended up pooping, but I think this is one of those spots where we see Spivak played super safe. Try not to get wrapped up in anything and just beat Oleinik, with the bare minimum. AA saying under 2.5 probably safest here. I wouldn't say that, man. I think it could go to a decision. Like Verdun versus Oleinik probably was one of those fights that probably should have gone inside the distance, but we saw their grappling almost nullify each other, and that could happen here. I'm not saying that Spivak is Oleinik level with his jiu-jitsu, but he will probably try to stay safe enough that he doesn't engage too much, and this fight goes the full 15 minutes. BP is saying, in my opinion, if Spivak loses this fight, I have to say he'll never be a champion. Everyone else has passed the test, this Oleinik test. If he can't, I'm sorry, but just leave. Yeah. I don't know if Spivak, even with the win here, will be championship material. I think there's just guys that are going to be too much better than him. Danny Legs, Paul Craig, under 1.5. Machine comes through last week. Yeah, fuck. That's the one that I should have taken. Danny Legs saying Verdum also looks like he came off the couch. You're right. Pepe Silva, Spivak will never be champ. I agree. AA Spivak decision sounds good, but Oleinik has awful cardio. Can he last 15 minutes and take punches the whole time? Yeah, that is my concern, right? Like if Spivak maybe later on in the second round gets the takedown and then just gets full mount and starts raining down punches, it could cause some trouble for Oleinik here. Tough fight. Landmine of a fight, I must say. But I'm ultimately going to go with Spivak by decision. All right. So next post is actually going to be a quick announcement of the Ultimate Weigh-In Show this Friday, tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern. I got some great guys coming on with me. First and foremost, we got my guy Felix Levine coming on. I forgot the name of his podcast. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick. But he has a podcast of his own, not a breakdown guy, host of the Where's This Going podcast. So very solid dude. He's been in pretty much all my Lock of the Night and Dog of the Night competitions. He knows what he's talking about. Very solid podcaster as well. Has some good takes, so I'm looking forward to having him on. We also have John Kelly DFS on Twitter. He's going to be on the show as well. Very sharp and solid dude that I can't wait to break down fights with. I believe he does work for FTN Daily. Not entirely sure what FTN stands for, but very live and very active in the MMA and DFS world. So he'll have a lot of good takes that you guys can rely on. And then lastly, we'll have a bit of a newcomer, somebody that hasn't really been, isn't too famous within the MMA Twitter world, but I do respect his takes and I do respect his ability to call fights. And that's my guy, Christian. Don't really have his last name, so I wasn't able to put it up for you guys, but his at on Twitter is at datplaybleezy. And he's in the Lock of the Night competition right now, $25 game. He's in the lead, has first place. He called a crazy, it was a parlay actually. He had Tom Aspinall to win by submission over Andrei Arlovsky, which was like plus 1,700. He parlayed it with something else and was able to take that top spot in the Lock of the Night challenge. So shout out to my guy, Christian. But sharp dude, just started podcasting recently with my guy, Brian Petrie, who was on the show a couple weeks ago as well, MMA Takes podcast. So Christian getting his feet wet in the podcasting. He said he's going to be hella nervous for the stream tomorrow, but I did have somebody drop out last minute, and luckily for me, Christian was more than willing to nut up and step in on short notice here to help out and come on the Ultimate Weigh-In Show. So once again, 9 p.m. Eastern, Ultimate Weigh-In Show right here. We got my guy Felix Levine, John Kelly, and my guy Christian at Dat Playboy or Dat Play Bleezy. Fuck, I'm fucking it up. So make sure you guys join us tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern. All right, let me just see what the chat is saying. Spivak has a decent jab that should hold off the sub. If he goes to the ground, it's a myth for Spivak. Yeah. All right. Main event time. Jung Ige, Korean Zombie, Pick 'em here. We got -110 on both sides. Let me see if the line has changed at all. It seems like there's a little bit of more love coming in on Dan Ige now. He's actually -125, +105 is the return on Chan Sung Jung. And this is a very, very tough fight to call. Obviously, with the line being as close as it is, a lot of question marks on both sides here. So Chan Sung Jung obviously coming off a very underwhelming performance against Brian Ortega last time around, where he got beat up on the feet for the majority of 25 minutes. Not the way a lot of people expected Brian Ortega to win that fight, especially with Chan Sung Jung being a -200 favorite there. Dan Ige, on the other hand, coming off a quick starching of Gavin Tucker, but that was right after he had lost the main event slot against Calvin Kattar, where he was able to at least notch one round there for moral's sake, or at least a moral victory, and then was pretty much torched up for the majority of that fight. But Dan Ige is one of those guys that's been slowly creeping up the the rankings, right? He was able to get that main event slot, like I said, against Calvin Kattar, but then goes out there and rebounds with a quick win over Gavin Tucker. I think he's always going to be one of those guys that just lingers around that top 5 to 10 spot, because he does have some good abilities. His black belt in jiu-jitsu will more often not come in handy, but his power in his hands that he's been able to develop since he's coming into the UFC has truly helped him to go out there and really hurt his opponents. You know, he may not get knockouts every time, but he's able to go out there and truly put it on his opponents. His speed and his blitzing attacks are really difficult for his opponents to track, and I think that ultimately will be the downfall of Chan Sung Jung here. Now, Chan Sung Jung, solid striker in his own right. Obviously, didn't look that good last time around, but can still go out there and put on a solid pace and pressure against his opponents, like he did over 5 rounds against Yair Rodriguez before getting finished by that crazy buzzer beater elbow knockout that Yair Rodriguez was able to manifest. But I think that Dan Ige is really going to be able to put it on him here, pressure him, land the bigger strikes, and possibly even knock out Korean Zombie, who we haven't seen knocked out, obviously, since that Yair Rodriguez fight. But I still do think that Jung has his chin is definitely deteriorating the more that it goes on. Like, he's able to knock out Dennis Bermudez and Renato Moicano and Frankie Edgar, and we don't really see him go deeper into fights other than his Brandon Ortega fight. But now he's going up against a heavy puncher like Dan Ige, who could definitely put it on Chan Sung Jung. And again, I think the speed advantage ultimately is going to be the reason why Dan Ige lands the bigger, better shots on the feet. And even if he wants to drag this fight to the ground, I think Chan Sung Jung has a great jiu-jitsu game. Obviously, you guys remember him for having the first ever twister finish inside the UFC, but he still is very crafty on the ground. But I think that Dan Ige's black belt might be a little bit better than what Chan Sung Jung brings to the table here. I've heard a lot about what's going on with Chan Sung Jung's camp and all that, and it doesn't really lead me to believe that this is the spot to go out there and back Chan Sung Jung, and this, very tough fight for him. So ultimately, I will be going with Dan Ige. Either decision or knockout, I think, is very live here, as I do think that he can put it on Chan Sung, and I think he's going to be able to hit him over and over again. I do think that Korean Zombie is slowly starting to deteriorate in terms of his skill set, and I think that we'll see Ige actually bring that out of him. The under 4.5 -110 does not look too shabby, but Dan Ige is hella durable, and I'd kind of be surprised if Chan Sung Jung actually puts his ass out. So I think if there is a finish, it actually comes from the Dan Ige side. Ige by knockouts +380, and I think that will deserve a little bit of a sprinkle here. Even Ige by decision at +250 is not too bad, but ultimately I will go with Dan Ige, and I think he actually lands the big strikes that will absolutely put Chan Sung Jung on wobbly legs, and then eventually finish him later in this fight. So I'm going to call probably second or third round knockout here for Dan Ige. Again, in a very, very close fight. My money will only be on the Ige KO prop here, more than likely. But I could absolutely see Chan Sung Jung winning this fight. How does he win it, though? Probably volume striking, landing the better strikes, staying away from the big strikes of Dan Ige. But to do that over 25 minutes, I think it's going to be very difficult for Chan Sung Jung to do that. And again, like I said, Dan Ige, very durable. I'd be surprised if Chan Sung Jung puts him out in this fight. So I'll go with Dan Ige, and I'm going to go with him to win this fight via knockout. Let's call it third round knockout for Dan Ige. All right, let's see what the chat is saying here. BP is on 50K. Dan Ige. Alexei Sestian is saying tricky little fight, complete stay away from me, but probably play Ige for Ige for DFS. I agree. Mixed pressure fights. This reason it's -110 both ways. I agree. Joseph McBride, if Ortega can rock Casey a few times, I think Ige could KO him. I agree. Dan Goldstein in the chat. Morning, brother. Let's pull out of the nosedive. That was Jamal Hill. Yeah, for sure. I'm definitely trying to forget about that one. Mixed martial arts is saying this fight's going to be a KO or decision. Yep, most likely a KO over KO. Whoever catches who first. I think that's going to be Ige. Exactly. Chan has been with Fight Ready for a hot minute. It's just because of COVID. He went back home for 2020. Ige plus 400 on DraftKings. KO plus 400. I think that deserves a little bit of a slot. Jared is saying, I feel bad for KZ. Seems like such a cool dude. His skill set just isn't improving. I agree. Waleed Raid, Dan Ige showed up some gyno his last fight, then got one punch knockout for the first time in his career. Interesting for sure. I will also say that I'd be very intrigued to see how the Moicano fight would have played out if we actually saw at least 3 or 4 rounds of that, because I think that Moicano was more than likely going to win that fight, especially with how we saw the Brian Ortega fight play out. So I do like whoops. But I do like Danny to win this fight, and I think he could get the knockout. Kung Dao Chicken Zombie said he wants it to be a 3-round live bet. Ige after round 3. Yeah, I saw that as well. Never. So you don't think Zombie could sub Ige if he wrestles? I don't. I think that Ige is a very solid black belt in his own right. I'd be surprised if Chan Sung Young actually snatches up a submission here. All right, there you guys have it. Dan Ige is going to be my main event play or pick. Again, no money on it. I'll probably just play Ige by knockout around that plus 400 range, and that will be it for my action. So let me just run through the card for you guys once again in terms of my picks. Let me just get this so you guys can see my beautiful face. Let me just pull up the card. So I'm just going to go by the order that Best Fight Odds has it at. So starting from the bottom, I got Casey O'Neill. I'm going to take her by decision. I got Joaquim Silva. I'm going to take him by knockout second round. I'm going to take Martinez over Parisian via decision. I'm going to take Semelsberger over Williams by decision. Lima over Brown by decision. Murata over Jandiroba by decision. Camur over Negumereanu by decision. Potential for a ground and pound finisher late in the fight. Davy Grant by decision over Marlon Vera. Sungwoo Choi by decision over Erosa, but I think that Choi could potentially find a knockout there too. Turman, I'm going to say by decision over Bruno Silva, but I could see a sub being live for him as well. Spivak by decision. Again, it's in the plus 600-ish range. I think I'm going to have to take a little bit of a shot there. And then Dan Ige by knockout, probably round 3 over Chan Sung Young. All right, let's see what the chat is saying on the back end here that I'm going to get out of here, as I do have another podcast that I'm going to be jumping on as a guest at 2 o'clock. So I want to stretch my legs a little bit. Kung Dao Chicken Zombie has some sneaky subs though, for sure. I agree. Any PFL bets? I haven't actually, again, just no time to look into PFL. I do want to give Bellator and UFC my utmost attention. Again, I don't even want to bet PFL just because of their scoring system. It's fucked me over in the past. Again, when I've just been hypothetically calling some of these PFL fights this season, it's been going pretty well. So maybe down the road, I'll look to add PFL. But the only thing that I'm doing, again, Super Square and DGen Parlay here. I got Roy McDonald. I got, Rory, Zeffirino, Magomed Karamov, and Alexei Kunchenko. Parlay those 4 guys. That's about it. Again, 0 tape, 0 research. That's what I like. Dan Goldstein saying Zombie is already 1 foot out the door, wants to retire and start a family. I think Ige bodies him. I agree. Mixed partial fights saying Semelsberger by finish, not decision. Maybe, but again, Chaos seems like he could take a shot. He was getting some big shots from Michel Pereira. To me, right now, it seems like he has solid durability. So I'd be a little bit surprised if Semelsberger actually gets the finish, which is why I'm going to go by decision. Derek C, Roy McDonald minus 1,000 is crazy. I think Gleison Tebow is far off a cliff at this point. Looks far so far. What's the pod jumping on at 2 p.m. trying to turn it impossible? I think it's going to be a pre-recorded one. So, I'll tweet out the link after it's actually been posted. But don't forget, propping you up tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern. Me and Cody are back to give you guys the props on all of these fights that I just broke down for you guys. So make sure you guys come back in about 6 hours to my channel, and we'll be doing the propping you up show. So shout out to everybody that jumped in on the stream. If you guys haven't already, please do hit that like, hit that subscribe if you haven't already. That truly helps your boy out. And I'll be sure to see you guys tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern for propping you up. See you guys then. Love you guys. Peace out.